So we are going to have a bit of a discussion today, and we are going to base it on a recent report that we just did, the Death and Rebirth of the Service Desk, it's called, how AI and automation are reshaping IT and enterprise productivity. So this was an independent report. It was actually about 1,000 EUC professionals actually responded to it, and it gave us some really compelling insights, I think, about the current market space, but also the future landscape of IT service delivery and IT at large. And hopefully we're going to use some of those findings to actually fund some of our questions and see how well you know your EUC colleagues at the same time. So let's kick it off. We should be able to get the first question up there. There you go. So this was one of the questions we asked. So the service desk, as we know it, will cease to exist within 3 years. So Sarah, let me start with you for this one. So what do you think not the right answer, but what do you think the answer from the respondents to the survey was?
I think it's going to be pretty high, so I would probably say D.
D, 72%. Actually, you get a prize for that. I'm not sure what the prize is, but yeah, 72% of people basically thought that the service desk, as we know it at the moment, will cease to exist within 3 years, which is interesting. So on that point, Sarah, let's begin with you and some comments about GSK. Like, could you kind of share with us your perspective on not just the service desk itself, but also service delivery more broadly, where it's been and where it's going at GSK?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I can speak from my experience. So, Sarah Jones, I'm in GSK. I look after our global site operations team, so essentially running tech support across GSK. I guess if I think about where the service desk has been and where our global site operations team have been, since we started using Nexthink 18 months ago, we didn't have many insights really into how our landscape was operating in terms of data. And I think now what we're seeing in the last 18 months is that abundance of data that we now have with new products, Nexthink included, is that we're starting to be much more experience-led. I think the service delivery term is a bit outdated now. I think you see a lot of companies that are moving from kind of end-user compute to modern digital workplace solutions. You know, that seems to be a term that seems to be moving. And I think with that, most companies are starting to be more experience-driven. So rather than your reactive service desks, your reactive tech hubs, you know, we're trying to be much more proactive, but then going one step further than that and actually trying to be preventative and predictive. And so I think with that, you know, comes the naming convention. So we actually have, at the moment, service delivery leads, and we're looking at what we're going to call them in the future. And without it sounding, you know, too quirky, we want them to be kind of digital experts, like Dexperts. But we need to find a name that kind of, you know, resonates, because that is a bit quirky. But I think that's where a lot of companies are going, and actually not being focused so much on technology, but being more sort of technology agnostic, but using the tools and the data to be really data-driven in our insights, and then actually using that regionally as well to understand, you know, where we've got differences and nuances, country by country, market by market, even within our own businesses within the company as well. So, you know, looking at experiences of a PC versus a Mac in India versus America versus Australia, and using that data then to make decisions on what we do with our applications and our PC estates, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's where we've kind of evolved, and that's where I kind of see many other companies kind of going as well.
Perfect, great. And welcome back to the stage, Sarah. I know you presented last year at the Experience in London as well,
yeah.
so I really appreciate that. Mark, first time on stage Experience, yes. First of many, I think. But we'd love to hear more about Freshfields' approach. You know, how does IT, particularly the EUC teams, you know, how do they strategically align with Freshfields' specific objectives and needs?
Yeah, sure. So for those of you who don't know, Freshfields is a global law firm, one of the so-called famous Magic Circle law firms. So we support some of the world's largest organizations with their legal needs across multiple areas of practice. And yeah, I think my role is workplace technology, senior manager for workplace technology within the firm. And when you talk about strategy, on one level you could say, well, workplace technology, that's not very strategic, is it? It's just delivering the basic productivity tools, but those are actually really fundamental for our lawyers to be able to operate. And Personally, I find it really a good environment to work, in the sense that those things are really valued by the firm. People recognise the importance of just being able to send an email, and I suppose what I would say is what we're trying to do is make it a more frictionless experience for people to use technology within the firm, because in law, what we're effectively selling is people's time, and therefore if we can make people more productive with that time, then we're going to deliver a better experience, a better service to our customers. So it's really key what we do.
No, perfect, actually. And I think certainly there's a lot of industries like that are reliant, what you're selling, as you said, is people's time, like law firms, consultancy, all organisations like that. And any disruption they have to their time gets in the way of you being able to generate value for the business, fundamentally.
Absolutely. And I think, digital experience is kind of fundamental to how we drive continuous improvement across the firm. I remember when I first joined about 5 years ago, IT wasn't in as good shape as it is to today. And the problem we faced was where do you start to fix this, and having something that gives you an objective view of what experience is as the basis to build that improvement upon is really important. So
fantastic. Sounds great. And then Robin, last but not least, down the end there.
Hello.
Hey again. Welcome back to the stage. You were on stage a couple of years ago,
Thank
I think. So Man Group, obviously you've got a strong focus on democratising IT. Could you tell us a bit more about what that means for your organisation and how that's been realised in practice?
Well, there's a few ways. In the most practical sense, one of the things is don't make bad decisions, which seems sensible. But if you think about it from an end user's point of view, is as engineers, we tend to go, oh, we have a hammer, we're going to use that hammer, every problem looks like a nail. You probably recognize these. So what that led to is, historically, we set a lot of settings. It's mandated. This is the only way that you are going to get it. What we're trying to do is instead, we're trying to have a good, healthy default where we present, okay, this is probably how you want it. And one of the practical examples we have is that Outlook caches is constant bane. Some people have a lot of emails and they want to have a very small cache because they want it's faster. And other people, they want a very large cache because they want to search everything. Neither is correct from an engineering perspective because they're both correct. So what we've done is we're using a campaign that actually detects when you've grown that cache to a certain size. We go, hey, you might be using one of these two behaviors. Which one do you prefer? And we give you a chance to set that setting to what you like instead of us trying to make that decision on your account. So that's what I kind of mean by don't make bad decisions, because that's an engineer's point of view which might not resonate with a person. The other thing we're doing when we're talking about democratizing IT is we try to, I sometimes jokingly say the illusion of choice. And what I mean is that we've picked very high-performing devices. But back to what Sarah said, you have both Windows and Mac. And I think most people are commonly, have encountered one or two people who say, oh, this one is the best. And again, that's a personal preference. There isn't always necessarily a correct answer. Some rare instances, there is one. You can't run one on the other. And it's our job to guide you in those cases. But that's less and less true these days. So what we try to do is we try to set healthy default options. We try to give you good options where whatever you pick is going to be a really good experience. But we try to curate so that the choice you make is more about your preference, less about, oh, I need to have an engineering degree to decipher, can I do my work with this type of model? So those are some of the ways that we do that.
I love that. So it's almost like personalizing, or giving the employees a perception they've got a personalized IT approach, not just a corporate standard saying you have to do this.
Yeah, and we're trying to encourage that whenever we find the urge to go, right, let's just set this setting, fire and forget, never touch it again, and instead go, well, actually, could there be opinions here? Is it really a security thing? Is it one of the few things we really, really care about, or is it just give people the option?
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, let's go on to the second data point and have a look at that then. And this touches on a theme, I think, which is close to all of your hearts. That's proactivity. So proactive IT incident response will protect my organization's productivity. So what percentage? Let's go for Mark on this one, actually.
I would think that would be fairly high, especially with the audience we have here today. So I think I'll go with B.
96%. See, I think you may have all read the report, actually, but that's a good thing as well. But absolutely right. 96% of people agreed that proactive IT incident response would protect their organization's productivity, which is amazing. So then, Mark, on that point, I mean, could you share some of the proactive innovations that Freshfields have implemented and how they're making an impact?
Oh, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'm going to share maybe a couple of very practical examples here. So in our world, and I'm sure in many others, Outlook plugins are the bane of our lives. We seem to have a proliferation of those, and there's a trade-off. Obviously, there's the functionality those plugins provide versus the performance overhead it places on the device, and that's another pain point. Obviously, people want performant devices. So what we're trying to do is find that balance where people are only having those add-ins enabled that they really need to do their job, rather than we enable them for everybody. And what we're doing is we've been using Nexthink to identify and help people understand which plugins they need versus ones they don't, to make, back to the point about democratization, allowing people to make informed choices around what they have enabled and what they don't, and therefore doing that, we hopefully improve people's performance. The other example I was going to use, again, really practical one as well, is we're investing a lot of money in terms of refreshing people's devices, and the challenge we've got is, how do you prioritize? How do you decide who gets the new device first? Because we've got a lot to get through. So we're actually using the data to look at the things like the DEC score, for example, that then says, okay, well, you're first in line for the device. You've got a better DEC score, so you're further down the list. And what that helps us to do is avoid, IT being overwhelmed with requests for new equipment. So those are a couple of hopefully practical examples of how we've innovated using Nexthink.
It's interesting you mentioned that. We've empowered our support, our tech support, we call them, to make that decision as well in the individual. So sometimes we'll have someone approach us and go, I'm having a really tough time, and if we find evidence as well, we can go in Nexthink. We then kind of weigh up, okay, well, did you just receive this device 3 weeks ago? Should probably fix it. But most of the time, there seems to be a strong correlation. It's already approaching the end of the life. So we just allow them to swap them there and there. So we kind of empower that to our individual support representatives to try and, in a similar vein, going like, well, that's what's going to be the outcome anyway. Why argue?
Absolutely.
And we just kind of, we move our budgets around in the background to try and accommodate for that.
Yeah, and we do similar as well. I think, making educated decisions, being, again, data-driven, right? So if somebody is almost coming up to the end of their life and you know that they're going to have to maybe move to Windows 11 in a few short weeks, making those decisions up front and just allowing them to go earlier and, just saving yourself the pain. So, or saving your user the pain.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to add to that, Robin, about how proactivity is shaping your strategy at Man Group?
I mean, we try to encourage that in every level of what we're thinking about. So from an architectural point of view, it's back to that, making these good and healthy decisions. Like we've recently upped the lowest tier of hardware that we have to what would have generally been considered developer-grade hardware just a few years ago, because we found that actually it leads to better outcomes. So those £200-300 or whatever it is now in difference to get that highest tier is actually worth more for our staff. So we try to take that proactivity also into like what decisions do we make on hardware that you're going to get in the future already, and then just continuing to drive that in the kind of engineering day to day, and like just have we considered what the impact of this is, and then we've got a DEX program where we actively automatically create tickets based on all of the lowest scoring individuals, and we've gotten into a good habit now of it gets reviewed both at an engineer level, at a support level, and it's then overseen by both managers from my engineering side and from the support side. And that together just informs a lot of our conversations. I think we come up to 1 year of sentiment this week. So we've already realized that we've interacted with almost more than 60 or 70% of everyone in our organization individually. And every time we reach out and say, hey, we saw a thing, or hey, we're connecting back to you, you wrote a thing in a survey a few weeks ago, every single one of those interactions is positive. We have yet to find a single person who goes, right, this is my time to tell you what I actually think. They go, wow, someone listened, and we're trying to latch on to that like goodwill. So I think the proactivity just means a lot more talking in very short sense.
That's great, actually, thank you. And then Sarah, I know that GSK has obviously placed quite a strong emphasis on digital fluency. Could you tell us a bit more about your proactive efforts in kind of nurturing that across the company?
Yeah, so I mean, we formed a GSK Digital Academy. I mean, we're very digital and data-driven across our company and have very ambitious targets around that. But a number of different ways that we've been kind of looking at this. So we have a GSK Academy, which is for creating digital programs all the way through our organization. So again, starting right at the top of our company. And on leadership training, we have a program called Leading in a Digital Age. And it's really around making leaders aware of the sort of opposites that we have of people with digital fluency. And we've got people on completely different ends of the spectrum. So we have, trailblazers who we could give, AI tools, we can give them Microsoft Copilot, we could give them everything. And, they want to just get involved and see what it can do for them. And then we have, skeptics on the other end who are really not that curious and kind of think that this tool is going to take away their day job. So they're much more skeptical. And what we're really trying to do is to teach our leaders and all of the people within the company that actually it's okay to be on any part of that spectrum, and we just want people to be curious with the tools. And we facilitate workshops, so we have people coming together, again, the trailblazers and the skeptics, and actually by having those workshops together and actually really experimenting, it allows people to understand what the art of the possible is. And we kind of see that with some experiments that we've done with Copilot as well. So having people experiment within the tools and then share that in groups and then actually host Teams calls to share with people what they've learned. So it's really building sort of foundational education around digital and data across the whole company using the tools that we have access to. And we recently, in the last couple of years, started holding an event called DataCon, which is available to everyone in the company. It's just a half day, people can show up. But again, it's helping people understand what that Data Academy is there for, what it can teach them, and allows them to really learn and be curious at their own pace. So there's lots of like bite-size, trainings available, and you can go as fast or as slow as you want. So, building in that digital muscle, I think, for everyone in this day and age is super important. So we're placing a lot of emphasis on it.
That sounds great. And I love starting with the leadership as well. Often they're forgotten about. People think they just know everything. They know.
Yeah, and that's actually where. Yeah, and it's where we started. So that's a really interesting thing. So the program, started at kind of VP level and then is being kind of rolled out, through others. So making sure that all of the leaders in the company really understand, the different personas that we have with, digital fluency and embracing that within the company. So yeah, it's really good to see that. It's really important, and I think when you can see it come from the top down, you realise the importance that the company is placing on it for everybody.
Absolutely, love it, love it. Okay, then the final data point, and we're going to come to you for this one, Robin, and everyone else has got them right so far, so there's no pressure, okay? But, so most EUC organisations will have a team entirely dedicated to DEX within the next 3 years. So what percentage of people are you going to go for there? The 3 out of 3?
That's clearly not an absolutely wrong 0. So on the other end, seeing your target audience, I'm going to go with C.
C, absolutely right. 96% of the people that were surveyed, and this is 1,000 EUC people actually from a variety of customers, absolutely agreed that there would be a dedicated DEX team within the next 3 years, which is fantastic to hear. So actually, Robin, I mean, on that point, so Man Group has clearly made experience a clear priority for the organisation. So what does kind of the roadmap for expanding that commitment look like?
Well, I mean, I'll continue on a thread I've already picked up on hardware, where we're actually trying to systematize some of that interaction that we talked to on the individual level, where we're using DEX scores, we're using averages of age and other multiples to go and actually interact with you maybe 6 months prior to when you're meant to have your hardware replaced. Because we find one of our most recurring conversations is my whatever device is slow, or I don't like it anymore, or it's old, everyone else has something shiny. And by setting that expectation early and automated, we think actually we can help set expectations, make it clearer that you're getting a very interesting in the next version of whatever we're deciding soon, and this is about the timeline, and then give you that interaction to go, actually, I need it now, I've outgrown my device, or so that instead of what we're seeing today, people come to us right at the end of their tether where they're already frustrated. We're hoping to get in so early that it's just natural. Oh yeah, someone asked me about that. Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of deflated the entire conversation. So that's a thing that we often find ourselves just preoccupied with, because I think we're still going to be replacing hardware every year for many years to come, unfortunately. So we're just trying to make that very smooth. And the other bit is, in every interaction that we can, we try to continue that automation of, well, actually, is this a setting we need to set, or is it a setting that you can opt into? Can we contextualize these things, take out some of that tech lingo, and make it, okay, well, what is the impact for me if I make A or B decision, and just continue looking for those types of options. And hopefully, get more people involved in talking about DEX, both internally and externally.
Sounds good, perfect. And then Mark, I mean, same for you, like thinking ahead, do you kind of envision that the future service desk will evolve into that experience desk, or do you see the service desk transforming in such a way it becomes inherently experience focused?
I'm a great believer in a multi-channel service model. So I think what will happen is an experience desk will become complementary to the traditional service desk. And indeed, I can already start to see it happening. So we don't yet have a dedicated experience desk in Freshfields, but what we do have is we have people that come in every day, look at what the data's showing them in Nexthink around the opportunities that we have to improve experience, to preempt things, preempt issues, and do something about that. And that's already starting to happen now. We don't call it experience desk, but it's heading in that direction for sure. You know, back to what I was saying earlier around productivity, if we can preempt problems so that people don't have to call, then that's great. That makes people more productive. It's far better to prevent an issue than you know, however good you are at fixing it. So for sure, that's something that we'll continue to develop. And I think the way I kind of think about it is it's a kind of a top-down and bottom-up approach. So we'll look at the data and say, what are the big things that we can fix that you know, results in the biggest service improvement for everybody? And then we'll look at it at bottom up, and we'll look at individuals and individual devices and say, actually, you're having a frustrating experience. What do we need to do to fix that? So we're coming at it in both directions. And I think as we mature and the idea of you know, using the tools in that way develops, I think we'll hopefully the result will be more productive people, less calls into the desk. But that said, I think the service desk still, the traditional service desk still might have its place.
Perfect, okay. And then Sarah, I know that GSK seems to be quite ahead of the curve in its holistic approach to IT. Could you talk to us a bit about how AI is being integrated into your services, and also how you're supporting employees in adopting AI tools?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I mentioned Copilot, so we have lots of programs of AI across the company. We actually have a GSK Assistant, which is our own in-house Gen AI tool, and we actually have a virtual agent through our ServiceNow, and actually we're trying to make them as intelligent as one another, because I think the ultimate way that we want to be able to help our employees is, we used to have this premise of, do it yourself, everything was kind of self-service, but now we actually want to go from do it yourself to do it for you. And I think, eliminating those service requests, and instead of actually, having people to create a service request, before people could search for them and it'd say, okay, this is the request that you need, go and fill it out. We want to take that one step further. So we want to be able to take the information that we've already got about those employees and then actually create that service request for them. So using the tools that we have, I think the evolution will be that that's where we get to. So, I think the points that have already been raised about the elimination of the desk are probably valid. I think we'll get to a very thin desk in future because we may always need to have a desk available for certain tasks, but it will become much more rudimentary, I think, than what we have today. We have like 24/7, 22 languages. I mean, that's not going to continue forever. And certainly as we're starting to evolve these tools that we have in the environment, I think that's going to mean that people are able to self-serve more. They are going to have, these tools that can do things for them. And naturally, as people become more curious through our rollout of the academies, and they become more proficient in those areas, then certainly that will mean a far less amount of interactions to our service desks and our help lounges and hubs. So that's kind of where we expect it to go to.
Sounds good. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, Mark, and Robin, for your insight there to the whole audience. Big round of applause for all our panelists.
Thank you.
For that.